The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by Excelerated S2P. Thank you for joining. So we have a slick 40-minute webinar today, and we're going to focus on how we can talk to you around your business and provide value around the procure-to-pay cycle, potentially. So the agenda we've got today, we'll do some introductions as you normally do. We'll get into that, and then we'll talk about your state of your business and how we can transform it with some value pointers in the P2P cycle. You'll see the value and gain benefits, and we'll showcase that with a solution, the right solution we think would fit. And then we'll recap with some of that actual value that you've seen and see how you can realize that for your business. In terms of questions and answers, there's a section at the end, but we encourage you to use the questions text box in your toolbar. So ask questions as we go through. Just to let you know that we've got a number of presenters today. I'm pleased to have two colleagues on the call as well. This is Naveed Ahmed speaking from Excelerated S2P. I'm the general manager here, and I'll be the host of this particular webinar. I'm pleased to have Tom Sihon and Dan Powell. Tom will be talking shortly and give you some more insights in how you can achieve some of the benefits and value we've been talking about. And then Dan will showcase some of those with a solution that we've got to demonstrate for you. Just a bit about Excelerated S2P. We specialize in source to pay, as you can tell by the name. And we are a global organization with presence in some of the main regions out there. We offer a host of services, and we, as I say, we do specialize in source to pay. So anything around that area, we have offerings in terms of helping you and your business in various industries across the board, with deep experience across solutions and consulting around best practices, etc. So a little bit more about that in terms of some of the industries we work with. We're cross-industry, whether you're a multinational organization or a growing one, or even a startup. So you can see some of the names here. Honda is a multinational. We've got some growing organizations, Pasero we've worked with. So across the board, we've done a lot of work with organizations to transform their operations and their processes with expertise and particularly value-based solutions. And with that, I'm going to hand off to my colleague, Tom, who's going to talk to you a bit more in detail about some of the value.
Thanks, Naveed, and again, welcome to everyone joining us today. As noted already, our focus today is value, specifically gaining bottom line value by controlling spend. We'll show you how you can leverage the Ariba solution to drive tangible financial benefits for your company. As you'll see shortly in Dan's demo, we'll be highlighting some of the areas within the P2P process where spend can be managed, controlled, and rationalized. The objective, of course, is to alleviate pain points by improving compliance, transactional efficiency, reporting, and enabling your organization to collaborate better with suppliers. Improving your company's spend under management, which, as you know, is often among the critical metrics finance and procurement organizations are accountable for, is also of paramount importance. The technology you're about to see should mirror best-in-class business environments and begins to support compliance factors with a very quick and easy sourcing task, which only includes suppliers previously vetted by procurement. End users themselves can now solicit quick quotes for spend under a user-defined threshold allowing procurement the ability to focus on higher spend and more value-added activity. Once an award is made, a requisition can be pre-populated automatically with most of the necessary data. The requisition process can also be designed to manage and control spend by enabling users to first draw from or shop off established contracts and or pre-negotiated catalogs, pricing agreements, etc. in what we'd call a guided buying approach. Providing users with these controls or guardrails for which goods or services to buy, where to buy it from, and how much to pay helps to avoid maverick buying behavior, meaning the purchase of non-standard items at non-competitive prices from non-preferred suppliers. The user can draw relevant, approved standard item information onto their requisition, which can then follow your company's required delegation of authority rules, as well as any other functional pre-approvals. For example, your company may want to ensure that all software purchases are first reviewed and approved by an IT lead before it moves to business budget owners for final approval. Capital equipment may need to be pre-approved by an assigned controller as part of the overall approval process. Once fully approved, a requisition can be automatically converted to a PO, which might include any previews or reviews required by procurement before being transmitted to suppliers via the Ariba supplier network, which, by the way, is the world's largest network of suppliers. The labor savings of entering or converting requisition data onto POs or even soliciting competitive quotes for smaller spend transactions enables procurement to reallocate time to more value-added activity or migrate towards a more strategic role. This is particularly meaningful for small to mid-sized organizations who have precious few resources in procurement and have savings targets difficult to achieve due to a variety of circumstances, not the least of which could be a simple acknowledgement of procurement as a strategic function. Upon receiving POs and issuing confirmations as per your business rules, users and suppliers can view the status of orders online, eliminating the need for phone calls or emails to procurement, also a time saver. Based on user-defined configuration, suppliers can flip the PO information into a system-generated invoice and submit that back to your company via the Ariba network. AP departments will see an immediate improvement in the timeliness and accuracy of invoices received from suppliers, another key metric for AP, and are now able to process these invoices more efficiently and avoid time-consuming hours spent reconciling inaccurate invoices. Further value comes from faster approvals of invoices, timely payments based on established payment terms, the avoidance of late fees, taking early payment discounts if possible, etc. Finally, you'll see that Ariba offers a robust set of reports and other output that can provide multiple views and analysis of your procurement trends and behaviors. Slicing and dicing the data can help to illustrate critical metrics and measures of success, many of which you can see on your screen. Please note that most of them highlight success relating to procurement compliance and controls. Other types of information can also be derived, such as accrual data, meaning goods and services already received but not yet invoiced, something finance finds very valuable. So with that as some context, let's go to the demo. My colleague Dan Powell is ready to go. Dan, take it away.
Thank you very much, Tom. So I'll go ahead and share my screen with everyone. So with that, as Tom mentioned, to go through all of the aspects here, what's really going to be needed? And the feedback and how we've structured our demonstration today is really based upon all of the clients that Navid mentioned earlier. So what we've heard consistently as a theme is we need better insight into the spend that we have today. We need to be able to track some of the sourcing events and allow some of our end users to do some tactical sourcing on their own as well. One of the largest areas we see a focus is the need to be able to track spend against contract. It seems to be just disjointed. And to do all of this, we need to free up the purchasing department so that they can work with their suppliers to negotiate better values. And this all needs to be held together and driven by a very simple, easy-to-use tool that allows everyone to gain value. Taking a look at this buying tool needs to have a couple things as part of that as well. It needs to have a robust catalog. More content that we can put into the system for our end users to find means they won't be going out on rogue spend with P-card. So we need to have a strong catalog engine and a nice search tool as well. We need to have a network put in place where we can communicate back and forth with our suppliers. That communication can be purchase orders, order confirmation, ship notification, invoices, but also the willingness that they want to participate in a sourcing event as well. And of course, we need to have some accounts payable tool. Accounts payable needs an easy tool where they can take a look to match purchase orders and invoices and see has the proper receipt been made. That tool also needs to allow our end users to have some visibility to see what the payment status is when their suppliers might call them, as well as leveraging this tool where the suppliers can come back in and see what the invoice status might be, whether there's any type of invoice reconciliation that needs to happen, or if they just need to wait for their payment terms to expire before they receive their payment. So as we go through the demonstration, we have a little roadmap that we're going to follow. I'm going to demonstrate to you how we'll buy against a contract. We'll show you some of the invoice approval flow, and again, the focus is going to be on a simple process. We'll talk about tactical sourcing, empowering your end users there. We'll talk about managing rogue spend. So if we can begin to get some of that rogue spend under management with some preferred suppliers and some discounted pricing, we can begin to eliminate some of the P-card spend that you may have in your organization. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about reporting as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the demonstration. And this is what we call our guided buying page. This is our landing page. This is the home page. It's a fairly simple, intuitive navigation. We found during our deployment that by having this type of a tool, very little change management or training needs to be given to the end users to create their request. And as I walk through the demo, hopefully you'll see that it's a simple process. Pretty standard navigation. We have items at the top such as our cart. We have a notification icon that's going to tell us some of the action items that we might need to do. And we can drill into this a little bit in a few minutes. You'll see that we have request to approve, request to watch, reconciling invoices, all of that good information. You'll see we have the ability right here on the home page where we can request an ad hoc item, right? We'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about rogue spend. We'll have the ability to request on behalf of others, and of course, some of our more recent actions. We'll also show that if you're someone who happens to purchase the same types of goods or services recurrently, we have the ability to create a favorites. But within the favorites, we can create certain lists. So for this particular scenario, I have a week of supplier enablement services set up as one of my favorites. This comes into my system no different than any other type of a catalog item. I have a detailed description, I have an amount, I have when it's going to be available. I can put all kinds of attributes here, but the most important one to highlight today is that when I make a purchase for this item, it's actually going to go against contract ID 45 in our system today. The impact there is when we go to report, we can report about how much spend is left on that particular contract as well, and we can track all of these items as they go through their process. So I'll go ahead and add this item to my cart, and I can show you the cart in just a few minutes as well. The other aspect is I'll have the ability to, again, if I'm working with contractor services, maybe I have a need for some type of a program coordinator to go along with it. And again, this is taking a look and thinking about our contracts on how can we standardize this process so buying against a contract becomes very simple, right? No different than if I were to go through and purchase, pens, paper, or something else. But I can come through, take a look at my item here. Perhaps I need a week of services. Go ahead and add them to my cart. And then I can come through and check out. And you can see that I've been through this. I've got some other items that have been in my cart a few times as well. So we'll touch on those as well. So the system will remember where you are. So when I come to my cart, I can come through. I can name this particular cart, right? Maybe this request is something that I'm going to make several times. I'll be able to find it in my history. I can give it a unique name. All of my ship to, charge to information, this is all going to default based upon my user profile as well as the items that I'm securing. I have the ability to change this, and this is all configurable. So if your particular organization doesn't want most of your end users to change the ship to, we can certainly turn that function on and off, right? We take a look at all of this information. You'll see when we take a look, this contract information is going to flow through for the purchase order, again, for all of our talk through accounting and everything. When we take a look at the accounting, let's say, for example, we actually need to split this amongst multiple customers. We have the ability to split the cost as many times as we need, as long as our allocations equal to 100% of the items, right? I'll go ahead and send this request through, And as I send this request through and the process runs through, you'll see it's going to trigger an approval flow. This is right here for the end user to see. And a lot of times we'll talk with our clients and they'll say, how do we expedite an order? The way you expedite an order is very simple. You call your supervisor and say, in this scenario, it's P user 6, can you please approve my request? It's waiting on your approval. You can take a look and see that this particular one has an operations for the cost center because of the cost center assigned to. P user 2, as the cost center owner, needs to approve this request as well. We can take a look at finance and see that finance needs to approve it because some of the accounting is going against a department that doesn't have any managers. Now, the power here is you'll see there are a number of people that make up our finance department. Any one of these end users can approve, and it's going to take care of all of the finance. And again, this comes to expediting these requests and making them happen as quickly as possible. And you'll also see that in this scenario, because it's over a certain threshold that we've defined as $2,500 US, that the manager has to approve that as well. So while the end user is looking at this, you'll notice there's a couple ways to approve. I showed you the bell icon, and we'll certainly go back in there as well. But we find that in today's market, a lot of end users are wanting to approve through their tablets, through an application, and we certainly have an application for both buying and approval and invoice reconciliation. But what we find most frequently is it's email that seems to be the driver. So in an approver's email, and they may get this on their phone or on their computers I have here, they'll receive an email similar to the one you see in front of you. Go ahead and type in whatever comments they want, and they'll go ahead and send this item along. Then what happens, the end user can come back, they can take a look at their request, and it's right here under our recent request. And in just a moment, it takes the system, it will automatically go ahead, and the end user can see that their request has been approved. Okay. I'll go ahead and refresh and give it just a moment to go through that process. So with this, we've seen how the requisition process works, fairly simple and straightforward. And you can see that the system picks that up, it runs the process through. At a glance, your requester knows exactly, my supervisor has approved this, the next stage, where that next stage is. In the event they need to expedite that item, they can move through and expedite that item as quickly as possible. Right? So with that, we've talked about buying against the contract, and the goal here is to make it simple for the end users. Let's take the complication out of it so that our end users know how to do this, make it easy, we can empower those folks. So now we'll talk a little bit about invoice approval. So when I come in, I can take a look at my bell icon here, and it's going to tell me, here I have a number of requests that need to be reconciled. So when I click into this, I can see there's a number of areas where I can go and focus. And for this one, I'm going to go look at the details for this particular request driven by P user 1. And when I click the details, it's going to tell me that there are two areas that need some attention. And the first one is this first open item, the tax amount. When I hover over the icon, it's going to tell me that the expected tax amount was $12.96. The tax on this purchase order is $13.46, and there's a different tax code. So I can rectify this in a couple of different ways. I can come through and change the tax codes as it may be applicable. I can take the action and I can say I want to accept the invoice tax amount. I can determine that I want to accept the amount that I expected it to be. I can do a manual match, or I can defer this to someone else. Right? The other exception it's going to throw is that there's a quantity error. And when I take a look at this, what this really tells me is this item has been invoiced, but it has not been received. And this factors into some of the reports that Tom mentioned when we take a look at how we're going to go through our reconciliation for everything. In this scenario, I would probably send this back to the end user to go through and create the goods receipt in this scenario. Okay. Once we go through, we clear out our invoice exceptions, then the invoice can flow through. Right? All of these notifications are all sent through email as well. And again, we're going to put it front and center for your end users to see in the notification icon here on the home page. Right? So where we're going with invoice approval, we want to automate notifications. We want to keep it simple. We want to let everybody know where to go to make sure they've taken care of everything. So the next thing we're going to talk about is tactical sourcing. We've talked about how to go through and purchase things. So when I think about the tactical sourcing, this is going to be driven off of the preferred suppliers that you've put in your system. And it's also going to leverage request forms. Now, these forms are one of many different forms that you can completely configure within the system to either be a requisition form or a request for a quote. This scenario, this has been put together unique for some of our life sciences clients that we've taken a look at. And what I'm going to do is just populate a few of these fields so I can show you some of the policies as well, and then we'll flip over into a scenario that I've sent out to a supplier. So I'm going to go ahead and say that our estimated price is $35,000. And all of these form fields, we have a lot of different options. We have dates. You can see with the if it's required or not. We have hoverovers to help give details and descriptions. Certainly have the ability for drop downs. Lot. So if you're running sourcing events, you're probably familiar with lots, where you're going to identify the certain things that you want your potential suppliers to bid on, what they'll take care of. Because this is a database, absolutely everything is reportable. And one of the things we find is certain industries have certain items that they need to track. For example, in the life sciences, there's a Sunshine Act or FDA that they might need to report on any request that goes out against that. And we can indicate that here when we're working with our suppliers as well. And you can see as I move forward, there's this little pink or this red line. And this is telling me that I have a policy violation. And what it tells me is when I take a look at this is I can't directly submit to a supplier for a quote anything over $30,000. It's going to run through the purchasing department. But I also can't submit anything under without a preferred supplier. So if I go through and change and put my amount up above to something under that $30,000, they'll come through and the policy goes away. From here, you can see in this particular scenario, based upon this code and the logic that we have 3 suppliers that we can work with to generate a quote. We can choose those suppliers, and then we'll send our quotes off to those suppliers. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit and take a look at the request that I have through my menu icon. So when I come here, you'll see I have an option for quotes. In this scenario, I've already created my January lab service quote. I've sent it out to the 3 suppliers that you saw earlier. And this page is going to go through, and it'll have all the information that we put on the form. And here, this is all the information that I've populated, the storage, the lot number, all of that. And then you'll see down below, these are the supplier responses. Again, I have all the emails that go out to the suppliers. The suppliers respond back. There's lots of emails that are driven to basis that includes all of the quotes and the attachments as well. And here I can take a look. My first supplier is a little bit less than the other one. My second supplier is going to come through at the $29,000 versus $30,000. From here, I'll need to take a look at the requirements and determine which one I want to leverage. Sometimes I'll take a look and the one that might cost a little bit better, maybe we have a better track record, I can confirm, and what happens is this is going to go ahead and send this response back to the supplier to let them know that we're going to move forward and accept their request. Right? From here, I'll send the request out. You can see, again, it's going to trigger an approval flow, just like everything else we've talked about in creating a requisition, so that we do have controls in place. Then, once that supplier fulfills, they'll be able to invoice against that purchase order. And again, this gives us back into traceability of everything that's going on within the system. So the other side is, so with that, we've talked a little bit about tactical sourcing, the power of 3 bids in a buy, right? So again, this empowers your end users. We have a policy in place in our system that says up to a certain amount, let the end user go ahead and run that sourcing event. Anything over that, the purchasing group certainly needs to get engaged with. So now we'll talk a little bit about rogue spend. So when we think a little bit about rogue spend, this is going to be anybody that's making a request outside of your preferred supplier base. Perhaps it's going to be on their P card. Out of the box, there is a form for ad hoc items. And these can be for goods or for services. And the rationale here is drive your end users to leverage the preferred suppliers that you've loaded into the system. When they select a supplier, they'll pull all the suppliers that have been vetted by the procurement department. They'll create a request, and that request is going to route to the purchasing group or their finance manager, whatever approval flow that we work through and configure together so that it meets the proper channels. But oftentimes what will happen is you'll have end users that are going to try and go against the system. So for example, if I come into the system and I decide I want to search for a new computer, I can search for a MacBook Pro. And what's going to happen is you'll see that in our existing catalog, we're not going to have any MacBook Pros that'll be available. So rather than drive through and allowing me to go pull out my P card, go to the store and buy those, there is an option to go through and leverage what's called spot buy. And as I wait for this to come through, here we go. Our spot buy catalog is a partnership that Ariba had in place with eBay. All of these MacBook Pros that you see are going to be available through preferred suppliers within the eBay network. eBay has already negotiated with Ariba discounted pricing. Sometimes that might be better discounts than you'd be able to negotiate on your own. These items will come in. They've put the pricing in place to give you a little bit of a discount already. The nice part about this is when you go to market, you can have millions of SKUs available to your end users as you identify which suppliers you want to work with to build your existing catalogs. And from here, of course, you'll have the traditional attribute navigation, just like we have in the other site, to say, hey, I only want to take a look at the 13-inch size monitors, and it'll reframe that. I can go through and add these items to my cart, and it's going to go through the same checkout flow that we've seen from the contract standpoint. And again, the reason for this is we want to standardize the process to make it simple for the end user so that we can then take a look and make it reportable. So we've talked a little bit about rogue spend, giving you some examples on how we can leverage some of the tools within the application, such as Spot Buy, to bring controls on that, as well as our ad hoc forms. And the last stage we're going to touch on is a little bit about reporting. Because at the end of the day, what good is it if we can't report on these items? So as I click the link that's going to take me into the administrator menu, you're going to see that there's a lot more detail that's available within the system. And this will be where most of your power users will come, right? Guided buying is great for the buying and the approving process. This part of the portal is going to be reserved for more of your administrators. You can see that if I have any events, such as sourcing events, there are 22 different events. I can see the status of those events, that I have over 1,500 supplier approvals that have been approved. I can take a look at any contracts that might be getting ready to expire. But the real power here is I'm going to take a look at some of these public reports. These are all, I'm going to take a look at our prepackaged reports first. These are all of the default out-of-the-box reports that come with the system. And you can see it's a pretty expansive list. If I come in, for example, to drill into purchase order reports, I can see even amongst purchase order reports, there are some 30 or so reports that exist. And I can come through on any of these reports and go ahead and run them and take a look and see what's going to happen. So the first thing that will happen when you go to open a report is it's going to ask you to put in any types of filters that you may want. You'll have the ability to run that report in the background as well as export it right away. I'm going to go ahead and open it up and just kind of share with you real quickly how this will work. They're all driven through a pivot table layout. It's similar to many other report writers that you might be accustomed to working with, where once every evening, that data is refreshed with the production data. So this is not real time, but it is a little bit of a delay, which is not at all uncommon. The first thing you'll have an option is you can use this page filter to refine the purchase organization ID. Perhaps I just want to take a look at purchase organization 1000. These are additional fields that can be added into the report. So maybe this report has a lot of good information in it, but I'd really like to include the bill to location. I can simply click on that and drag it and drop it to wherever I'd like to see that item within this report. Okay. From here, once I've configured a report, I can go ahead and save that report. And you'll see it's going to save to my personal workspace where I came to earlier today. So I'll go ahead and save. And when I save my report, I can save it to a couple of different areas. I can save it to a personal workspace where just I can see it. I can save it to a public workspace where I can share it with other users, or I could put it back into the system where absolutely everybody in the organization can see it. So we saw those 30 or so reports just within purchase orders. I can create my own set of reports and put them in there as well. And you can see when that data exports, it's going to export into a CSV format. Now, the other part of the report aspect that's really powerful that I'll show you is if I go in and take the scenario where I've created a report, I've customized that report to be all of the data that I would like to see on a regular basis. And I've saved it into my personal workspace. I'll go in to my personal workspace, take a look at my reports, and here I'm going to go ahead and run this in the background. Sorry. When I click background, what this does is this opens up the opportunity for me to save a version of this report that might be a little bit unique. But here's where the power comes in. I can run this report just once as soon as it's done. I could, for example, maybe I'm going to be out on holiday next week. I could run it next Friday as opposed to having to remember and ask Navid to run this report for me. Or, even more powerfully, I can run it every week. You know, maybe I need to run it every 4 weeks, month, year, however it may work. Define the date and time and define a date range so that this report is going to run on whatever schedule that I need to run it so that I can take a holiday and enjoy myself. And I can add in who needs to review this. When I add these email addresses, they do not have to be email addresses within my organization. So perhaps I'm going to send this to the folks that I work with here at Accelerated Source to Pay, but I also need to send this to some auditors, for example, might need to take a look at some of our reports. But it really takes a look at the reporting aspect of this and says, let's get the reports, let's get all the data that we need to into the right hands, to the right people when they need it on whatever schedule needs to happen. So through the course of this discussion, we've taken a look at what can we do to make the process easy to drive compliance. We've talked about buying against a contract, making it simple for an end user, making it work no different than it would any catalog so that you can reduce the amount of training it takes to get users to leverage your system and be in compliance. We've talked about approvals for both invoices as well as reconciliation, and we've shown that we can automate the notifications through the bell, and again, a simple process. We've talked about tactical sourcing. We've talked about empowering your end users so that they can go through, make some of those sourcing decisions based upon the approved suppliers that are already in the system. That frees up the purchasing department so that they can focus on some of the more tactical needs that they may have, some of the strategic suppliers that they need to negotiate with and put in place. We've also talked about road spend, leveraging spot buy to put controls in place. Then you can report on that and see if you actually need to begin additional supplier relationships to fill some of those gaps. And most importantly, we've talked about reporting. We've taken a look at the over 150 or so reports that come pre-configured out of the box, just to give you a sample of that power. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody for listening and tuning in for the demo, and I'll turn it back over to Nabil.
Thank you, Dan. That was outstanding testimony to you to be able to show that in such a short time frame that you were able to cover that with simplicity and use of the system. So thank you for that. I wanted to just wrap up here with some schematic here that to tell you that we do cover P2P comprehensively. So we've talked primarily about the buying impact for procurement, but obviously we've alluded to accounts payable and other functions as well. So this schematic is really going to talk to you about how we're drawing some of that information together. So we work with any ERP, we can connect our solution with that. Master data is pulled back and forth through that process. Obviously, suppliers are key to this process. So we work with suppliers and they collaborate with us through the network capability. So some of the things that we saw during Dan's demo, whether it's requisitioning on catalogs or contracts, we do have budget checks, another point of compliance that we can bring in there. Once that check is performed and the requisition is created, the approval happens and the orders get transmitted. And we've got collaboration there with the suppliers. With their changes, we can push those back to the ERP, order confirmations we alluded to, and then shipment notifications from your supplier, which can generate goods receipts. And then obviously the good e-procurement lends to good e-invoicing. So, and the process of either verification or reconciliation inside of Ariba that you saw earlier. So we've got good invoice management capabilities there. And then just to finish off the loop there, we also handle the payment process. It can be either done in our tools or we can send the invoice ready to pay or okay to pay secure ERP, so it can then be transmitted for payment, and then that status and remittance also shown to your suppliers, so they can see where their payments or their invoices lay in terms of the process. Obviously, reporting is key, as we mentioned. Anything that's we've got available, we captured, we can report on it. I'll also cover accruals there as well, so capability to give you accruals reports, and then actually integrate those with your ERP to generate the accrual on a month-end or period-end basis. Okay, all of that provides value. Okay, and there's various value points we called out for you, but you could argue that's across the board there. Okay, so I'll let Tom now wrap up with a few more points around the value that you've seen. Go ahead, Tom. Thank you.
Thanks, Naveed, and thanks, Dan. Great job, as always. In summary, we saw how primary components of the P2P process can work and where value points exist. Consider your challenges when not combining best practices with best-in-class technology. Users without the previously mentioned controls or guardrails order what they want from where they want and will likely pay above market premiums for goods and services. Cost reductions become very important to achieve. Without a built-in DOA structure, purchases can be made absent appropriate review and approval, possibly exposing the company to risks associated with introducing the wrong items, services, or suppliers into your environment, and without appropriate legal protections. Procurement teams, often one of the functions companies choose to invest in last or least, are forced to serve in a tactical role rather than as a critical strategic business partner who can help shape category spend strategies. Tedious rec to PO data entry and price solicitations can consume an inordinate amount of budget dollars with very little ROI to show for it. AP teams are forced to spend too much time reconciling inaccurate invoices, often delaying payments to critical suppliers, and possibly even incurring late fees, negatively impacting relationships. The ability to take advantage of early payment discount terms is also not there. Excelerate's demonstrated its ability to help companies transform their P2P capabilities quickly and at an affordable cost, with ROIs possible within a year. We'd like to take our last few minutes here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Tom, for that. We are at the questions and answers section. I can see a few that have come in. The first one I'm hearing is about working with ERPs, and whether we work with an ERP, and I can answer that. And then there's another one around mobile apps. So both affirmatives to those. We can work with any ERP with various techniques to integrate with that ERP. And then mobile, yes, we've got mobility, whether it's PDA or your iPhone. There's a capability to use apps as well. The other question I've seen that's come through here is around the contracts module. Somebody's asked, do you need the contracts module to show some of the contract compliance that was featured in the session today from Dan? So maybe Dan, can you pick that one up, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Navid. So the contracts module does not necessarily need to be included with this particular solution. The contracts module will allow you to upload your documents. It will allow you to redline your documents and negotiate with vendors and do digital signatures. It's a fantastic module to include, but without the module, we can still load all of the contract data, what we refer to as metadata. So contract amounts, we can track the spend against that contract amount. We can track the number of days before a contract expires. We can even configure the system. For example, if I'm a contract owner, we can configure the system so that 90 days prior to expiration, I'll receive an email. And you may recall seeing the little pie graph on my homepage that said contracts getting ready to expire. So we can set the system to still notify end users when contracts are getting ready to expire and when they need to take action, even without the contracts module.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I've got another question here. It's asking about what are some of the challenges around deployment. Do you have some rapid approaches to that? So can we take that quickly, Tom? We've got a couple of minutes. So over to Tom.
Yeah, I mean, Naveed, I think that, when you're talking about executive management support, I think that's the largest challenge from the beginning. You have to make sure that you have a team capable of devoting their time out of their day-to-day schedules to focus on the project. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, getting the support from executive management to allow folks to focus on what could be a shorter time period for deployment is critical, and without that ability to focus and a right amount of time, it could be a protracted amount of weeks for deployment, and also making sure that at the beginning you have the right requirements that are documented and that the business agrees on what the requirements are and what they want their business process to look like, so we can build the technology around your needs.
Great, Tom. Obviously, that's one of those questions that we need a bit more time, and as we're short on time, we're right on time here. I'll just cover a couple of things here. Somebody's asked about a demo, and we've actually covered that in here. So, we can talk to you about some of the things that perhaps you've seen today, discuss some of your aims, and show you how you can gain savings and value. Help you with business cases. That was also asked separately by somebody. We can help your company come up with a business case and contribute towards that. We do have industry-specific knowledge and experience. As I mentioned, demos. Happy to do demos. Just approach us and we will arrange that. And then, we've started talking about deployments and so forth. And we will be running some future events as well. So look out for those. But delighted to have you on board today for the call. Thank you for your time. A little bit more information about us. We can arrange for the deck to be provided and the recording as well. So with that, thank you very much.